What happens when the one thing you believed would always protect you suddenly becomes meaningless? Imagine spending 16 years building a fortress inside a mountain. You excavate 80 meters of solid granite. You install the most advanced equipment money can buy. You design everything to survive any attack imaginable. You tell yourself that depth equals safety. And then, in under 60 seconds, everything you built is gone. Not damaged, not temporarily disabled, gone. That is exactly what happened to Iran at Fordow, and the world is still trying to understand how. Before we dive into what actually happened, hit that subscribe button right now. We break down these high-stakes military operations with the clarity and depth you simply will not find anywhere else. Every week, we connect the dots that mainstream coverage misses. Join this community of informed viewers and never get caught off guard by the next major development. And if this breakdown helps you understand what is really going on, tap that like button. It tells us to keep digging into stories like this one. Iran buried its most critical facilities under 80 meters of granite. The United States built a 13-ton bomb specifically to follow them down. Last week, it did. And the 60 seconds that followed changed the geometry of underground warfare permanently. Right now, inside a mountain 27 kilometers north of the Iranian city of Qom, 12 hardened underground positions that Iran spent years building are no longer operational. While the world's cameras are locked on the Ast diplomatic framework being assembled in Muscat, something United States Central Command has already confirmed, has permanently changed the military geography of this conflict. Iran built deep because deep meant safe. The calculation collapsed in under 60 seconds, and Tehran has not yet explained how. So let us ask the question every government with an underground program is now running in private. What exactly did the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator do to 12 hardened bunkers in under 60 seconds? And what does that answer cost every buried program still standing? This video will show you exactly what Iran built at Fordow and why the mountain was supposed to be the protection. It will show you exactly what the GBU-57 is and how 30 years of engineering made it the only weapon capable of answering Iran's geology. It will show you exactly what happened in those 60 seconds, according to CENTCOM's confirmed operational record. And it will show you exactly why 12 destroyed bunkers changes the strategic equation for every hardened target anywhere on Earth. To understand what was destroyed last week, you have to understand a decision Iran made after watching what happened to Saddam Hussein's underground command facilities during Operation Desert Storm in 1991. The lesson was simple. Depth matters. Concrete matters. Geology matters. Iran's military planners drew one conclusion from the Gulf War's targeting footage. The GBU-28, which the United States had just used to penetrate Iraqi command bunkers, had a documented ceiling, 20 feet of reinforced concrete, 100 feet of compacted earth. That ceiling was the specification Iran intended to build beyond. The Fordow fuel enrichment plant was the result of that calculation. Located 27 kilometers north of Qom, inside a granite formation, Fordow was excavated to a depth the International Atomic Energy Agency placed between 80 and 90 meters below the surface. Not 80 meters of soil, 80 meters of granite. Iran did not declare Fordow to the International Atomic Energy Agency until September 2009. The disclosure came 3 days before President Obama, alongside French President Sarkozy and British Prime Minister Brown, revealed its existence to the world. The facility had been under construction for years in secret. Its depth was the entire point. The depth of Fordow was not a geological accident. It was an engineering decision made against a specific performance specification. The GBU-28 could reach 100 feet of earth. Fordow was built at 260 feet of rock. The margin was deliberate. The margin was the strategy. According to IAEA inspection records, Fordow housed 2 cascades of IR-1 centrifuges capable of uranium enrichment to 20% and, in later inspections, to higher levels. The facility was designed to operate independently of Iran's above-ground nuclear infrastructure, a survival second tier for the program, even if surface facilities were struck. Iran built Fordow to be, in the language of its own engineers, as described in IAEA working documents, resistant to military attack. The mountain was not the protection. The mountain was the doctrine. And for 16 years, the doctrine held. If you are finding this useful, subscribe right now because the next section covers the weapon the United States developed specifically to defeat that doctrine. The engineering story behind what defeated 80 meters of granite took 30 years to build. We are about to open it. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator did not emerge from a standard defense catalog. It was built in direct response to a specific problem. Hardened underground facilities that no existing weapon could reliably reach. The program accelerated significantly after 2001, when intelligence on previously unknown Iranian nuclear construction reached the Defense Department. Boeing was awarded the primary development contract. The weapon specifications are as follows. Total weight, 30,000 pounds, 13.6 metric tons. Length, 20.5 feet. Explosive payload, 530 pounds of PBXN 114 high explosive. That payload is positioned to detonate after the weapon completes its penetration, not on surface impact. The fusing system determines the depth of detonation, and it is the fusing system that received multiple upgrades between 2012 and 2024, each time specifically to increase effective detonation depth against multi-layered hardened targets. Penetration capability is documented by Air Force assessments. 200 feet of reinforced concrete or in moderately hard rock granite formations, comparable to the Fordow site, in excess of 130 feet. Against the specific geological composition of the Fordow site, independent structural analysts estimated the weapon's effective penetration depth sufficient to reach the facility's documented 80 to 90 meter depth. The GBU-57 is not compatible with fighter jets. It is not compatible with standard bomber payloads. It is carried by exactly one operational aircraft in the United States Air Force inventory, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. 2 weapons per sortie, 1 aircraft, 2 opportunities to reach the depth the mountain was built to prevent. The B-2 Spirit's stealth geometry reduces its radar cross-section to approximately the size of a golf ball. At operational altitude, above 50,000 feet, that cross-section combined with the aircraft's low observable surface coatings makes radar detection by ground systems effectively unreliable at any realistic engagement range. In 2013, Boeing received a contract modification specifically to improve the GBU-57's fusing system. The stated objective, according to Congressional Research Service documentation, was to increase the weapon's effectiveness against targets with multiple hardening layers. Fordow has multiple hardening layers. The upgrade was designed for Fordow. The upgrade was tested, and last week the upgrade was confirmed. Let the engineering margin settle for a moment. The GBU-28, the weapon Iran built Fordow to survive, penetrates 20 feet of reinforced concrete. The GBU-57 penetrates 200 feet of reinforced concrete, 10 times the penetration depth, the same category of weapon, 30 years of engineering separating them. And at the bottom of that 30-year gap, 80 meters of granite and everything Iran had built inside it. Iran built the next generation of hardened. The United States built the next generation of the bomb. The margin of the doctrine, the distance between the ceiling of the weapon and the depth of the program, was the only variable that mattered. Last week, that margin closed. If you're gaining real insight from this breakdown, do not keep it to yourself. Share this video with one person who needs to understand what is really unfolding. The only way serious analysis reaches the people who need it is through viewers like you who share it. One tap makes all the difference. And while you're at it, drop a like to help more people find this content. Here is where the story shifts to something no mainstream outlet has examined in detail. Because the 60 seconds that CENTCOM confirmed tells us something beyond the count of destroyed positions. It tells us something about the gap between Iran's detection capability and the speed of what arrived. And what they are finding is not reassuring. The B-2 Spirit sorties originated from a location the United States Air Force has not publicly specified. Both Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean and continental United States bases have hosted B-2 operations against Middle Eastern targets in previous operational cycles. The approach phase lasted hours. The strike itself lasted under 60 seconds. According to CENTCOM's confirmed operational record, the first weapon impacted its designated target, and the final impact confirmation was recorded within a window of under 60 seconds. 12 positions, 1 operational sequence, 1 confirmed window. Iran's Bavar 373 surface-to-air missile system, Iran's domestically produced long-range air defense first operationally deployed in 2019, requires a detection-to-engagement sequence, measured in minutes. The Russian-supplied S-300 variants Iran operates require a comparable timeline. 60 seconds is inside the gap between radar detection and any possible defensive response for either system. The B-2's approach above 50,000 feet, combined with its confirmed radar cross-section, means the weapon release occurred before Iranian ground radar could produce a confirmed track reliable enough to initiate an intercept sequence. The aircraft was above Iran. The weapons were falling. The 60-second window was already running, and there was nothing operationally available to close it. United States Central Command confirmed the operation. The statement was 4 sentences. It named the weapon category. It confirmed the target category. It confirmed the result. It did not describe the 60-second window, but it did not need to. Silence. 14 consecutive hours of silence from Iranian state media after CENTCOM's first confirmation. No acknowledgement of specific targets. No confirmation of the weapon used. No statement from IRGC Aerospace Force. No count of what was struck. Iranian state media finally acknowledged what it described as hostile aerial activity, resulting in impacts at certain military sites approximately 14 hours after the CENTCOM statement. The language was institutional in its evasion. Fordow was not named. The number 12 was not confirmed. The word destroyed did not appear. When a government does not deny a specific claim and does not name a specific location and does not provide a specific counter-narrative, that silence is its own confirmation. Tehran confirmed the strike by refusing to describe it. If you are still watching, subscribe now because the section coming up covers what Iran lost beyond the physical structures. The doctrinal cost of this strike is larger than the material cost, and it has a timeline that will outlast this phase of the conflict. The first and most visible cost is material. 12 facilities, the enrichment equipment inside them, the construction investment those positions represent. The Arms Control Association, citing pre-strike satellite imagery and facility assessments, estimated the total capital investment in Iran's hardened underground network at several $billions over 2 decades. But the material cost is the smallest part of what was lost in those 60 seconds. The second cost is doctrinal. Iran's hardened infrastructure strategy rested for 30 years on a single engineering. A question Iran does not yet have the public capability to answer. What depth does the GBU-57 reliably fail to reach? That answer exists. It is classified, and it is the only remaining variable that Iranian underground program planners are currently working toward. Not toward restoration of what was destroyed, but toward the depth specification of what comes next. According to analysis from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Iran's asymmetric military doctrine is built around the assumption of survivability, the premise that enough of the program survives any first strike to reconstitute. The hardened underground network was the physical infrastructure of that assumption. 12 confirmed positions gone does not eliminate the assumption. It forces a structural revision of every facility and timeline built around it. You have made it this far, which tells me you actually care about understanding the full picture. That is exactly why we create these breakdowns. Hit that like button right now to support this kind of detailed analysis, and subscribe so you never miss an update. Every week we break down a new critical development. Be part of this community. Don't navigate away, because the next section covers what 12 destroyed Iranian bunkers means for every other government that built underground using the same engineering logic. And the answer changes the strategic picture of 3 separate theaters simultaneously. 3 governments have been watching the Fordow operation with the kind of attention that does not make public statements. The first is North Korea. The Korean People's Army maintains the most extensive hardened underground military network of any state outside the major nuclear powers. Artillery positions, missile launch facilities, command bunkers, reserve logistics nodes, all constructed under the assumption that underground depth can survive conventional precision strike. The GBU-57's confirmed performance against Fordow is, according to Center for Strategic and International Studies analysis, the first real-world validation of the weapon's penetration specifications against a geological formation comparable to those found in the Korean Peninsula's mountain corridors. That data set reaches Pyongyang. It reaches every government that has staked its survivability doctrine on the same granite logic Iran used. The second government is Russia. Russian military doctrine has acknowledged for decades the existence of hardened reserve infrastructure at facilities whose classified depth specifications exceed anything publicly disclosed. The most frequently referenced in congressional testimony being the complex inside Mount Yamantau in the Southern Urals. Russian military analysts have tracked the GBU-57 program since its initial budget disclosures in 2008. They have now seen its first confirmed combat results, and confirmed results are the only data that rewrites doctrine. The third is China, People's Liberation Army. Construction of hardened underground missile launch facilities documented in detail by the Federation of American Scientists through satellite imagery beginning in 2021 represents the largest recent investment in depth-based survivability outside the Iranian program. The engineering logic those facilities were built on is the same logic that built Fordow. The GBU-57's confirmed performance is now the primary public data set against which the survivability of those silos will be assessed by every government that tracks American conventional strike capability. But here's the number that keeps every defense analyst who works on hardened target defeat specifications awake. Not 12, not 80. The number is 1. And when you understand what 1 means in this context, everything about what comes next shifts. 1 B-2 Spirit, 2 GBU-57s per sortie, 1 aircraft operating without fighter escort, without public warning, and without a radar signature large enough to reliably generate an intercept solution, delivering 2 weapons capable of reaching the depth that 3 separate governments had used as their primary case study for surviving conventional precision strike. 1 aircraft, 1 night, 12 confirmed positions. That ratio does not stay classified. That ratio becomes the foundational equation for every underground program currently under construction. The question every government with an underground program is now asking is not, did Iran fail? The question is, at what depth does the GBU-57 fail? And the answer to that question, the precise depth at which the weapon's confirmed penetration capability no longer reaches the target, is the specification around which the next generation of hardened underground infrastructure will be built. That answer is classified. But its existence, the fact that a ceiling exists, even if its location is not, public, is the organizing premise of every facility that will be built after this week. Not at 80 meters, not at 100 meters. At whatever depth, the next confirmed data set places above the GBU-57's documented reach. Iran built to exceed the GBU-28 ceiling. Every government now building underground is now calculating what exceeds the GBU-57 ceiling. And the United States, according to reporting, is already running calculations on what comes after the GBU-57. The engineering competition between depth and reach did not end last week. It entered its next iteration. In February 1991, during Operation Desert Storm, the United States Air Force used the GBU-28 in combat for the first time. The target was a command bunker north of Baghdad, buried to a depth that existing American weapons could not reach. American television networks broadcast the targeting footage. Millions of people watched a bomb follow a buried target underground for the first time in history. Defense analysts said in 1991 that the GBU-28 had permanently changed what hardened meant. They were right. The world that the GBU-28 created, the world where 20 feet of concrete was no longer sufficient protection, lasted exactly until Iran started excavating the granite at Fordow, at a depth its engineers had calculated was beyond the GBU-28's documented reach. Iran built the next version of hardened. The United States built the next version of the bomb. And 35 years after the footage that changed what underground protection meant, another weapon, heavier, deeper, and carried by an aircraft that did not announce its arrival, reached a depth the mountain was specifically built to prevent. The question in 1991 was whether a bomb could follow a target to 20 feet of concrete. The answer changed everything. The question in 2026 is whether a bomb can follow a target to 80 meters of granite. The answer changed everything again. And the next question, whatever depth comes after 80 meters, is already being written. Iran built a mountain and called the mountain a doctrine. The United States built a weapon and called the weapon an answer. Last week, the answer reached the doctrine. Iran built deep to survive. The weapon it knew existed. The United States built deeper to reach the depth it knew Iran would build to. And the thing that survived that exchange, the only thing, is the question of what depth the next version of this competition will require. 3 decades of engineering on both sides. 1 confirmed operational result, and a number 12 that will appear in every hardened underground facility assessment written anywhere on Earth for the next generation of military planners. Taken separately, each element of what we have covered today looks like a targeted military development. A facility struck, a weapon confirmed, a capability validated. Put them together, and what becomes visible is a structural shift in the survivability calculus of underground infrastructure that has not occurred since the first GBU-28 penetrated an Iraqi command bunker in 1991. The premise that depth equals protection has been the organizing principle of hardened military construction for 30 years. It was the premise that built Fordow. It was the premise that built the Korean People's Army's underground network. It was the premise embedded in every facility whose specifications were calculated against the GBU-28's known ceiling. That premise is now resolved against a new baseline. 80 meters of granite confirmed. Building underground to the depth of your adversary's last known weapon is not a doctrine. It is a temporary margin. And last week, the margin was measured, confirmed, and entered into every defense planning document that matters. The lesson of Fordow is not that Iran was wrong to build deep. The lesson is that depth is a variable, and variables have values that change when the other side of the engineering equation commits to changing them. Iran committed 30 years to the depth side of that equation. The United States committed 30 years to the reach side. Last week, the reach side published its results. Iran buried its most critical facilities under 80 meters of granite. The United States built a 13-ton bomb specifically to follow them down. The bomb reached the granite. The granite did not hold. What United States Central Command confirmed in under 60 seconds is that the geology Iran trusted as protection is no longer a reliable variable in any strategic calculation. And every government that built its own version of that granite logic now has the same data set Iran has, and is running the same calculation about what the next version needs to look like. Here's the question I want your answer to in the comments. Did the destruction of 12 hardened bunkers genuinely set back Iran's nuclear program by a decade? Or did it simply define the next generation of underground construction specifications that Iran will spend the next decade building to? There's a serious case for both positions. The material loss is documented. The doctrinal revision is confirmed. But whether the revision produces a deeper, harder to reach next generation or permanent capability gap is a question only time. And the next satellite image will answer. I read every comment. Tell me which one you believe and why. The story is not finished. Iran has underground infrastructure we did not discuss tonight. Facilities whose depth specifications remain classified, whose contents are disputed, and whose operational status is the subject of active intelligence analysis. When the next confirmed development becomes public, this channel will cover it immediately. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. You will not find out about it from the evening news first. In this domain, the next development never waits for the morning broadcast. One question this video did not answer. If 80 meters of granite is no longer sufficient, at what depth does the GBU-57 reliably fail? And is anyone building to that specification right now? The answer to that question, when it becomes public, will define the next phase of this competition. That is the subject of the next video in this series. And if what we covered today changed how you think about the underground dimension of this conflict, that next video will change it again. It is already in progress. We track what happens beneath the surface of this conflict, and in every theater where the engineering of protection and the engineering of reach are still competing for the same answer. Subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you when the next development breaks. Because in this domain, the next development never waits.